Good morning. Happy Mother's Day. This is Sunday, May 8th, 2022. Not overly happy here in my house. Not sad, but uh, my daughter got COVID-19 and she's recovering. Her fever broke. She's feeling better. And then my wife woke up today with it. My son and I are both still testing negative, which is good. Neither of us have symptoms, but we're doing the best we can. So it's a good excuse to hide down here in the man lair, and I thought I would do another album review. I just did one of Willie Nelson's a few days ago. Yesterday, May 7th, Terry Allen, the great musician out of Lubbock, Texas, turned 79 years old. And I don't think enough people know about Terry Allen. And so at one point I would like to do maybe an overview of his career, but the previous day, his record label, which has done a fantastic job getting him into the spotlight again, putting out new music with him, has done a fantastic series of reissues so far. They did the first two records, the first one from '75, which is an absolute cult classic if you've never heard of it. It's called Juarez. It's a concept record. It's entertaining, it's brutal, it's hilarious, it's sad, it's one of the best records you'll ever hear. It's mostly Terry and his piano. He kind of got lumped in sort of unfairly with the outlaw country music, and as he said when people told him, "Oh, you're country music," he said, "Which country?" you know, alternative country, Americana really fits his sphere better. He was probably Americana music before the term was really starting to be lumped together, tossed around in the 90s. And then a couple of years later, he did a sprawling double album all about his hometown and home area called Lubbock on Everything. Because, you know, when you're from there, I think it goes for any of us, but so many of the musicians from up that way have said, when you're from there, it stays with you wherever you go. Terry Allen was actually born in 1943 in Wichita, Kansas, and his family moved him to Lubbock when he was a young boy. His dad was Sled Allen, who was in his 50s at the time. He had been a minor league ball player and opened a basically like a sort of civic center theater, and Sled would promote wrestling matches. He'd promote concerts. He had the first great, well, not the first great, he was the first one to bring some of the great black musicians of the day, the 40s and 50s, through town. He was the first one. He brought T-Bone Walker up there, he brought B.B. King up there, brought Hank Williams Sr. up there, brought Elvis Presley. So as a boy, Terry Allen got to see all of these great musicians, and it informed how he saw the world and heard music as a boy. And so that's why even as an adult, when he started making records, there's a bit of everything. And so again, along with he and Joe Ely and Waylon Jennings and everybody who've come from that area, they've said there's not a lot else to do, so you have to be creative. And creative Terry Allen is. He's a sculptor. He's a painter. He puts different art exhibitions together. A playwright, a poet. I don't remember if he's done novels. I'm pretty sure he's done short stories. His wife, the ultra-talented Jo Harvey Allen, is also a multifaceted artist and musician in her own right. Together, they're one of the most creative teams you could possibly imagine. And so anyway, Terry put out these two great records, but they were mostly Terry Allen solo records. Starting in 1980, he billed the record as Terry Allen and the Panhandle Mystery Band. And there's no real mystery to it, looking back, but I took a bunch of notes on both of these two records because I wanted to get my feelings right. I've listened to them a few times now. One I had on CD, one you haven't been able to get forever. And so 1980, he put out really his first full band record, and there's a lot of rock and roll and hardcore country influences on this, as well as maybe some Mexican influences. In Texas, there's always a Tex-Mex influence, and it's called Smokin' the Dummy, and it's a fantastic record. His son got into ventriloquism. They gave him a dummy, and the Booka, the older son, painted him up like a vampire. And so there you go. And then here's the band. Here's the Panhandle Mystery Band dressed up as vampires as well. In the Panhandle Mystery Band are some of the greatest Texas musicians you'll find. The great guitar and pedal steel player Lloyd Maines and his brothers are on it. Richard Bowden, who is maybe the best Texas fiddle player of the last 50 years. And then their friends Joe Ely and Joe's accordion player Ponty Bone are on this one, which makes this just an absolutely treasure of an album. So it opens with a really hard-driving song called The Heart of California for Lowell George. Terry Allen was friends with Lowell George. If you're not familiar with him, he was the leader of Little Feat. Before that, he was in the Mothers of Invention with Frank Zappa, and he died of a heart attack very young in his early 30s, not long before this album was released. So just a hard driving song, and all about up and down the roads and everything that could go wrong. You never know. And so the second one is more of a, again, nothing's traditional with Terry Allen. So I want to say a traditional country song, but it's not. It's got a great sense of humor. It's called Cocaine Cowboy. And it opens with, "Hey, Mama's in the kitchen, and I hope she finds a bottle of whiskey to ease her mind, but me, I guess I'll just snort cocaine. Daddy's in the backyard cooking barbecue, stripped half naked like the neighbors do, but me, I guess I'll just strip my mind." And I just, the opening lines of that, there's just such a twisted, dark humor, and humor, even in the darkest times, runs through Terry's music, and it's so much fun. It's so entertaining. And then there's sort of a back-to-back a series of real cowboy songs. There's Helena, Montana, and then Texas Tears. The first one's more of a slower song. The second one's a faster song. Just good story songs. There's a great wish I could find it here. Yeah. A woman came up to the cowboy in Helena, Montana. She said, "Hey, how about some fun now, Slim?" "Yeah." He stuck his hand in his pocket and he pulled out a bill. He said, "I don't need no fun, little girl, but I sure could use some pills." Just, nobody else but Terry Allen could write these songs, and they're absolutely hilarious. The second side opens with a song called Cajun Roll, which is really sort of a funky Texas version of Louisiana music. Richard Bowden's fiddle makes you think you're right down in the bayous down there. Even up in the Panhandle, Texas and Louisiana being right next to each other, there's so much musical influence that overlaps. Feeling Easy is just a laid-back cruising song. The Night Cafe and Roll Truck Roll, again, are kind of back-to-back songs, sort of the yin and yang of each other. The Night Cafe is about driving through, pulling all-nighters, seeing the Red Diner lights coming up, and meeting all the characters and the world that goes on there. And then Roll Truck Roll is really an ode to truckers, truck drivers, and it's on that one. There's just some ferocious vocals, and I wanted to mention that Terry doesn't have what you call laid-back vocals, but he can sing sort of smoother. But on this one, on this album, his vocals are just very forward. It has a very rock and roll feel to it, like I said. And so, oh, you know what? I missed a song. Whatever Happened to Jesus and Maybelline? This is a real interesting one because it's sort of a cynical look back, what happened to the good old days. And Chuck Berry's music was a focal point for so many people, and so he actually mentions that and then goes into Maybelline, the song, but he does a Texas honky-tonk hardcore version of Maybelline, hardcore for the time, and it's brilliant. It's one of the best covers I've ever heard. And so, anyway, then the last couple of songs on here, I also wanted to mention, too, on the Roll Truck Roll, Lloyd Maines somehow managed to use an electric pedal steel to imitate truck sounds. you think it's semis, and it's great. They go from one speaker to the next, and they roll back and forth. And it was actually the great Lloyd Maines doing sound effects on his electric pedal steel. So then it closes with sort of the whimsical Redbird. You know, there's an old sort of simile talking about a bird being stuck behind prison bars and going free, and that's sort of what this one deals with. And then it closes with a Lubbock tornado, in parentheses, I don't know, and it's all about the tornado that ripped through Lubbock in 1970. And so in it, they blame anything from the ghost of Buddy Holly to a communist sabotage. You know, it's not a happy-go-lucky song, but it's a really interesting song, and it's a really good album to end, a really good song to end the album. And so this is one of the two albums that came out as a re-release 2 days ago. And it is Terry Allen and the Panhandle Mystery Band, Smokin the Dummy. And since it's an album review and perhaps a rating, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to give this a 9.5 out of 10. I mean, that's a pretty darn high score. I love Terry Allen's music anyway. I think this might be my new favorite Terry Allen album. And I've got so many of his, and every one he puts out is just a killer. There's no fluff, there's no filler on his albums. Smokin the Dummy from 1980, absolutely raucous, unhinged, great music. And so I put on here, it's very frantic sounding in points, and I really like that. And so that's one of two records. 3 years later, and again, it's funny, these were, like I say, these were re-released on the same day and were put together on one CD. The song Cocaine Cowboy was left off when they put the two albums on one CD, which was a shame. It's a great song. It's absolutely hilarious. But as with everything he does, these are two very different records. There's a similar feel because it's a similar band. Lloyd Maines and Richard Bowden and the Maines brothers were back on this one. But it's not the same album. They're not like a part one and part two of one another. They're very much their own pieces of art. And so, second one here is called Bloodlines. And again, this is with the Panhandle Mystery Band. It's a lot of the same cast of characters. They had found this drawing on the main drag in Lubbock, and they had no idea where it came from or why. Decided it would make a good album cover, and it really kind of does. And it's weird, but everything Terry Allen does is a little off kilter, and that's part of what I love. But yet he's one of the most intelligent, well-spoken people you could possibly imagine. And I, seeing interviews, you wouldn't guess that this sort of laid-back older gentleman is capable of just this ferocious, frightening music, which is part of what makes it so great. Again, it's called Bloodlines. It opens with the song Bloodlines, and it closes with the song Bloodlines. And on the second, so I'll just talk about the beginning and the end. To me, it's a part metaphysical song and feel, and it's a part realistic look at the continuum of things, of family, of friends, of generations, of life, of the world spinning around. And so it's almost got and I've said this on several songs, there's almost a weird gospel feel to some of these songs, and I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm totally missing the mark. I'm not saying they're gospel songs, but there's a feel to them about it. So we'll come back to Bloodlines Part 2 that closes it. Song number 2 is one of his best-known songs. It's called Gimme a Ride to Heaven, and it's this hilarious song about a drunk guy flying down the highway in the middle of the night, and he sees this figure in robes with his thumb out in the wilderness and a halo in his hair, and clearly he's, not in the right state of mind, but it's this sort of mid-tempo hard driving song, and he picks up this hitchhiker who looks like Jesus, who convinces him, and he says, "Yeah, I've just come from Jerusalem where things are turned out bad, and I got to get to heaven and see my dad." And they end up sharing a beer, and the long and short of it is, of course, the hitchhiker puts a gun into his head and steals his car, and it's this really funny, outlandish song, and I don't know if you could say anything Terry Allen has had has been a hit, but it's definitely a hit with his audience and one of his best known songs. Um, Cantina Carlotta is a Tex-Mex song. It was originally done with just Terry and his piano on Juarez. And starting with this album, almost everything he did either had a song from Juarez on it, or the themes bled through. And maybe that's part of the whole Bloodlines thing, is he said that album he's never been able to escape it. It informs in some way or shape or form everything he's done since then. And so Cantina Carlotta, I'll give you one guess, sort of what it's kind of about. But it's with the full band, it's got the concertina on it, it's got the fiddle. It's a neat little Tex-Mex song. It almost got a mariachi feel to it. The song Our Land, which is a take on pronouncing Ireland, as best as I can figure out, it's got a very Celtic feel to it. I didn't do enough research. I didn't see what the song was particularly about, but it strikes me as about being about the Irish troubles, and so fighting with outside forces, and then the outside forces taking over the land and raping and pillaging. And I put on here some of his most brutal lyrics, and I'm not going to recite these ones. There's nothing explicit about it, but they're very very straight and to the point, and they leave little to the imagination. And then side 2 closes with "Oh Hallelujah," which again has sort of a gospel feel, and it was actually the title song to a play that his wife Jo Harvey Allen had written. And then, real quick, I wanted to put on the back here. So there's the back album cover there. So it's just, again, he's just got this sort of alternate way of seeing things, of looking at reality from a slightly different point of view, and I love it. And so anyway, side 2 opens with "Oh What a Dangerous Life." It's another mariachi tinged song, and it's from a friend's play, so it's got some interesting lyrics, but I guess without seeing the friend's play, I wouldn't know what it's about, but I like it. It's a good song. Manhattan Bluebird strikes me as being a song about a big city girl missing out on some of life's sort of simpler opportunities, about drinking a cold beer and having the jukebox play your favorite song and dancing the night away. And I don't like to use the term normal for anything, but maybe that's a bit more what it is. And then we go back to Juarez. And this one was originally more toward the end of Juarez, and it's called "There Ought to Be a Law Against Sunny Southern California." And it's a pretty hard driving piano pounder on the original version, and this is a full band version. Frenetic is the term that came to mind, without having to use a dictionary or thesaurus. And frenetic means hard driving or about to lose control, seemingly. And as this song builds, with a guitar and pedal steel and fiddle and Terry's pounding piano and the hard driving drum beat behind it, it's about a guy whose life is sort of spiraling out of control, and you'd have to go back and listen to Juarez to really understand it, but it does, especially if you've listened to that, this song makes more sense, but it fits with the sort of themes on this album. It's the only time he actually, I believe the only time up until then that he'd used the F word in song, and a lot of country music did not back then, so that's why it's hard to call it country or even outlaw country. It's not profanity for the sake of profanity either. It very much is used for emphasis. And so, again, Terry and all the musicians he worked with, and his wife being very literate people, they, you know, every word means something with his songs. And so then it sort of slows down, and then it picks back up again for sort of this instrumental fade out, and it's just a foot stomper. And then it closes with, so there are 9 songs on here. There are 11 songs on the other album. It closes with Bloodlines, where it's bringing back the same song, the same lyrics, but it has a big chorus behind it. And what's interesting is it's the first recorded vocals of both his son, Booka, and his other son, Bale. And then it never hit me all these years. An 8-year-old Natalie Maines is on here. Natalie Maines might be familiar to some of you. She's the lead singer of the Dixie Chicks, or the Chicks as they call themselves now. And I'd heard her dad was a musician, but for some reason I never connected the fact that it was Lloyd Maines, this god of Texas music. And I didn't realize she was a North Texas gal. And so she's actually part of the choir on the Bloodlines choir on here, which is really neat. And her uncles are on here too, and it's a family affair, which seems weird, but it totally fits. And so, again, this one I'm going to give a solid 9 out of 10. Maybe it will never lower in my estimation. It might gain. So between the two, you've got Smokin' the Dummy from 1980, which is a 9.5 out of 10. And you got Bloodlines, which is an easy 9 out of 10. And you know what? They could be looked at as even better. There are no songs on here that I would skip. You know, if I were to stream them, which I may or may not, I don't like it much. I would easily let these albums play from beginning to end and like every song, which is hard to do, very hard to do. So musically, these are diverse. They're fantastic. Again, there's a different feel to each of them. He's never repeated himself, but like I said, everything sort of flows together in his universe. And so I'm incredibly thankful to Paradise of Bachelors Records for continuing to get his name out there and get these great albums back in the hands of the public. If you're a fan of outlaw country Americana, you know, you may have heard, if you haven't really heard his music, if you're a fan of Guy Clark, Terry was one of Guy Clark's very dear friends. After Towns died, they were even closer. I've always looked at them as sort of the yin and yang of each other. I used that term earlier, so I'm sorry to repeat myself. Maybe like opposite sides of the same tree, you know, both rooted in reality, but seeing things from a little different point of view. They did collaborate on songs. And so if you're into Texas singer-songwriter music and rock and roll and rockabilly and folk and all that, there's something for everybody on these records. So I cannot recommend them highly enough. Absolutely thrilled that Terry Allen is still with us, still going. These sound amazing. Paradise of Bachelors has, like I said, been reissuing a bunch of his work, and these didn't let me down at all. Absolutely love these reissues. So there's my dual album review. It's a lot longer than the Willie Nelson one. Raise my cup of Shady Lady coffee to you and to Terry Allen and everybody involved. So thank you for your kind attention. If you've got those records, let me know. If this video inspires you to go listen to them, let me know what you think about them. And you know what? If there are other albums that are similar that I don't know about or that you like, that you think others should listen to, mention that in the comments below as well. So take care, everyone. I hope everybody has a great Mother's Day for those celebrating. And thank you very much for being a part of this channel.